Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Ramsey Speaks, where I talk about current events, politics, and social justice. My name is Ramsey. Today, we are going to be talking about the two planes of 50 migrants that were sent from San Antonio, Texas to Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And this video is going to be a part of a new series I'm starting called Human Rights Watch, where I'm going to outline various current events relating to human rights. If you've been hearing about this in the news and perhaps you're wondering, what is going on here? Why is the governor of Florida sending immigrants from Texas to Martha's Vineyard? And you have a whole bunch of questions? Then stick around and watch this video until the very end, because I'm going to outline everything that you need to know. Okay, so what exactly happened? So last Wednesday, September 14th, about 50 immigrants arrived via two planes from San Antonio, Texas, orchestrated by the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. These migrants were mostly of Venezuelan descent and do not speak English. And these flights that Governor Ron DeSantis orchestrated are funded by Florida taxpayers. Many of the migrants were living in a homeless shelter in the San Antonio area. Governor DeSantis very quickly and proudly took ownership of this, and honestly it actually is kind of sickening to watch the way that he's talked about this and boasted about this, like he's proud of this. It's quite gross, but anyways, let me continue. Quickly after the migrants arrived in Martha's Vineyard, Governor DeSantis' office made a statement advising news outlets that the migrants were transported by the state of Florida under a state program that was funded by their legislature earlier in the year to, quote, facilitate the transport of unauthorized aliens out of Florida. And they've allocated approximately $12 million towards the effort of what they're calling relocating illegal aliens. Keep in mind, this is a state that's suffering from some of the worst social problems that we have in the country. Things like climate change ravishing their communities, a totally broken and corrupt property insurance system in a state that desperately needs it due to their extreme weather, and one of the worst teacher shortages in the country, so bad that they're recruiting Army veterans to come and work as teachers unlicensed. And this is what you're choosing to spend taxpayer money on? If I was a taxpayer in Florida, I would be outraged. And aren't Republicans supposed to be the party of fiscal responsibility? This does not seem very responsible to me. I think you could find a better use of $12 million. All right, I'm ranting and I'm sorry, but this story has me very angry. So when I first heard about this, I was very confused as to why Florida was sending migrants out of Texas, considering it's not their state, so why are they even involved? Ron DeSantis' explanation for this is that these immigrants were likely to end up in the state of Florida, and that, quote, states like Massachusetts, New York, and California are better equipped to facilitate the care of these individuals who they have invited into our country by incentivizing illegal immigration. Now, how they came to the determination that these specific migrants were likely to end up in the state of Florida is not exactly clear to me. So this group of 50 migrants that does not really speak English and really didn't understand what was going on, more about that later in the video, arrived unannounced to a small island of about 15,000 people with no plan for their care, where they were going to sleep, how they were going to care for themselves. Nobody from the Florida governor's office reached out to authorities from the state of Massachusetts to coordinate the arrival of these migrants. It was completely unannounced. They literally just rounded up these vulnerable people like cattle, stuck them on planes, and dumped them across the country in a completely random place. Pure evil. And it's being alleged by many of these migrants that they boarded these planes under false pretenses, that they were going to Boston, that they were going to get expedited work papers, receive help in navigating the immigration system, English lessons, assistance in finding employment. Many of these migrants have reported specifically that a woman named Perla approached them outside of the homeless shelter and enticed them into boarding the planes with these lies. Some of the migrants were even allegedly put up in hotels for several days by the Florida government while they worked to recruit more people so that they could fill the planes. Now, Governor DeSantis denies the claims that there was any coercion or lying involved in convincing these migrants to board these airplanes. And he cites that all the individuals signed a waiver prior to boarding the airplanes, and they were given a packet of information that apparently contained some resources and like a map of Martha's Vineyard. But I'm like, Was this contract written in English? Could they even read it? Was it filled with all sorts of legal and technical jargon that they're clearly not going to understand? Did they potentially think that they had no choice but to sign these contracts since they're concerned about their undocumented status here in the United States? Like, I'm not buying it. So what happened once the migrants arrived at Martha's Vineyard? Okay, so these 50 migrants arrive unexpectedly, and thankfully, the Martha's Vineyard community was amazing and immediately sprung into action. And this is actually, like, if there's any silver lining to this story, it's that kindness and compassion always wins. And how this community responded to this was truly heartwarming. They immediately started collecting food and supplies and toiletries and clothing. At one point, they received so many donations that they had to move the donation collection site to the fire department. And they had to post on social media asking people to stop bringing donations because they had such a large surplus. A local church in the area, St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, was set up as a temporary boarding shelter. Residents from across the island and other parts of the country raised about $175,000 within a very short amount of time. And most of these were small donations. It's not like one large corporation or like a couple of really wealthy people donated most of that money. So this was truly a community-led, grassroots organization. These were just regular people stepping up to support people in their community that were in need. And I think that is just amazing to see. Last Friday, September 16th, the state of Massachusetts announced that the migrants would be voluntarily placed at a military base, the Joint Base Cape Cod in Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts, which is already set up as an emergency shelter. And Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker announced that the migrants were going to be housed in dormitory-style living, that families and individuals would be housed separately, and that they're going to have access to a whole array of services such as legal, healthcare, food, hygiene kits, and crisis counseling. So it seems for now they are in good hands. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why I think Governor DeSantis did this, and specifically why I believe he chose Martha's Vineyard. So in my view, I think he's trying to make a point. He didn't just pick Martha's Vineyard at random. This was calculated. So Martha's Vineyard is a small island in the state of Massachusetts, and it is best known as a summer retreat primarily occupied by wealthy liberal Americans. Former President Barack Obama actually owns a multi-million-dollar home on the island. I think Ron DeSantis is trying to make a jab at sanctuary cities and specifically at Democrat-run states and cities by pulling this stunt and sending these migrants there. And you know what? I think it backfired on him big time. I think Governor DeSantis was counting on there to be all sorts of backlash and outrage, which there has been. However, I don't think he was expecting for the residents of Martha's Vineyard to take these people in and do all this organizing and show this high level of compassion and care that they showed for them. I think he wanted to be able to point to the hypocrisy of affluent liberals and say, oh, see, so you're okay with illegal immigration except for when it's happening in your state. But that's not what happened, is it, Ronald? Because you never can win when you play dirty.
You never can win when you're dirty, honey. You never can win.
Instead, the people of Martha's Vineyard showed what empathy and compassion is all about, and they welcomed these migrants in with open arms. Take that, Ron DeSantis. So here's the problem I have and why I'm so angry about this. While I do not agree with Republican stance and views on immigration, I certainly can understand and appreciate that we have a crisis at the southern border, and that this is something that impacts Republican states more so than Democrat states in a lot of ways. I can appreciate and understand that a lot of border communities don't have the resources to deal with the influx of people trying to come to the United States. I get that, I do. I don't think anybody in this country really feels that our current immigration system is working, and quite frankly, it is on politicians on both sides of the aisle that we have not done anything to pass comprehensive immigration reform in this country, and that we've let this problem go on unaddressed for so long. And I can absolutely get behind, yes, let's have an intellectual conversation about this. Let's see how we can come together and think of solutions. But you don't take innocent people, these are human beings, let's not forget, and use them as a pawn in a political stunt like this to prove a point, especially with complete disregard for the health, safety, and well-being of these people. I also think it's important to point out for a minute that these people... Okay, so I'm about to say the words "these people" a cringy number of times. Hear me out. The reason I was using the phrase "these people" was because I was trying to emphasize that these are human beings first, not illegal aliens, or any other term that takes away from the fact that these are human lives. When I listened to the footage back, I was like, oh my, this sounds really bad. So I apologize in advance for the insensitive language. Please know I only had good intentions. Anyways, let's continue. These people that the Florida government rounded up on these planes and sent halfway across the country where they know nobody with no plan for their care, these are not quote unquote illegal aliens, which I don't even like that term anyway, because I don't think human beings are aliens, but these people were not doing anything illegal. They are asylum seekers that were going through the appropriate avenues to seek asylum in this country. Many of them are fleeing vicious and inhumane conditions in their home country, and seeking asylum is a legal process that is permitted in the United States. So to refer to these people as illegals or to insinuate that they're doing something that's illegal is just not an honest statement. And even if they were doing something illegal, that means that we can just treat them completely inhumanely? I don't think so. What Ron DeSantis did, in my opinion, was completely wrong. And I don't think that that should be a Democrat or Republican issue. I think this should be a human being issue. In the wake of all of this, a lot of people have been wondering and speculating about, was what Ron DeSantis did illegal? So let's talk about that a little bit. So the migrants involved in this situation are being represented by legal counsel from a 501c3 nonprofit agency called Lawyers for Civil Rights, or LCR. Now, this is a Boston-based agency, and according to their website, they work with communities of color and immigrants to fight discrimination and foster equity through creative and courageous legal advocacy, education, and economic empowerment. Their website goes on to talk about how they partner with allies and community agencies and law firms, and that they provide free and life-changing legal support to individuals and families, and also small businesses. They're really focused on the intersection between equality and justice and the law. So despite the fact that I only live about an hour from Boston, I have never heard of this agency, but from what I've been able to see online, it looks like they're doing really incredible work. If you want to learn more about the LCR, I'll link their website and some of their social medias down below in the description box. Now, their executive director is an attorney named Espinoza-Madrigal. So sorry if I did not pronounce his name correctly. And this guy has a pretty impressive resume. He is known for his work on immigration, but also education, healthcare, LGBTQ+ rights, housing, voting rights, public health, and his career has largely in part been focused on the legal needs of people who identify across the spectrum of race, sexual orientation, gender identity, and immigration status. He's done a lot of work in the area of HIV law, he's a graduate of the NYU School of Law, and he's clerked for 2 federal judges. Talk about someone who is, 1, extremely brilliant, and 2, using their talents for the greater good. This guy seems absolutely incredible. He also has a pretty badass Twitter account that I'll link down below that I suggest that you check out if you're interested in social justice and the law and things of that nature. So anyways, this attorney, Espinoza-Madrigal, who's also the executive director of the LCR, has been very vocal publicly about this situation with the migrants. In addition to being vocal, attorney Espinoza-Madrigal and the LCR at large sent 2 letters, one to the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts and the second to the state's Attorney General office, alleging that the actions by Governor DeSantis deprived the migrants' liberty through the use of deception, arguing they boarded the airplanes and crossed state lines under false pretenses. In these letters, they expressed concern that their clients' civil rights have likely been violated, and that they strongly believe that criminal law was broken in the execution of arranging these flights that brought their clients to Martha's Vineyard. And in their letters, they formally requested that they open criminal investigations into the matter. Okay, so since the filming of this video, the Lawyers for Civil Rights actually joined forces with a migrant-led nonprofit called Alianza Americas and filed a class action lawsuit against Governor Ron DeSantis, the state of Florida, and the Florida Department of Transportation Secretary Jared Perdue, as well as others. The lawsuit is requesting that DeSantis and his co-defendants be banned from inducing immigrants to travel across state lines by fraud and misrepresentation. The lawsuit is also seeking monetary damages for the harm suffered by the migrants. In addition, Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar said in a press release that his office office has opened a criminal investigation to determine whether or not the migrants were victims of crimes. Yikes. Things do not look good for Governor DeSantis. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, leave me a blue heart emoji in the comments down below. But the LCR are not the only attorneys that have publicly expressed concern about Governor DeSantis' actions. An immigration attorney by the name of Elizabeth Ricci, who is based out of Tallahassee, has publicly stated that she believes luring these migrants onto these airplanes with the promise of jobs and other resources makes them victims of a crime. Specifically, she expressed concerns about elements of human trafficking, and if that were the case, then these migrants would automatically qualify for a visa. Talk about Ron DeSantis' plan backfiring. Imagine if all these migrants got visas automatically because they were victims of crime perpetrated by the Florida government. In addition to Elizabeth Ricci speaking out and the LCR speaking out, the Massachusetts U.S. Attorney Rachel Collins said at a news conference her office would be looking into the matter and also speaking with the Justice Department. There's also been some questions raised about whether or not Governor DeSantis' actions could be construed as interfering with federal immigration law. So the reason for this is because, as I mentioned earlier, these migrants are not quote-unquote illegal aliens as the right keeps pushing. These were individuals that were seeking asylum through a legal court process, and many of them have court hearings scheduled in the coming days, weeks, and months that are now thousands of miles away from Massachusetts. So by shipping these people off to Massachusetts, the state of Florida has essentially completely derailed their cases, as it's seriously unlikely they're going to be able to appear for court, at least in person. I also think it's really important to discuss the role that race and ethnicity play in this conversation, and I'm sure somebody watching this video is going to be like,
why does everything have to be about race?
But the bottom line is here, these migrants were almost exclusively from Venezuela, meaning that they are brown people and Latino or Latina. Would this have happened to a group of Caucasian undocumented immigrants? Whoopi Goldberg actually made a really good point about this when discussing this topic on The View.
Legal process.
It can become as inhumane if they come here and there's no way to take care of them. That's my concern.
Here's what's interesting. You know, we don't have any problem when people come through the border from Canada. No. We don't have any problem when people overstay their time. Well, no, people overstay their visas all the time, and I notice we don't. Yes, and I notice we don't really go. And I love Canadians. Don't get me wrong. Okay, don't get me wrong. My point is, because it's been made into a brown people issue, it's a problem. You know.
So if hearing this story has gotten you as angry as I have, and you want to do something to help, here's some things that I recommend. Consider making a tax-deductible donation to the Lawyers for Civil Rights organization, and I'll link how you can do that down below in the description box. They are doing some truly amazing work, and a little bit goes a long way. Imagine if everybody that watched this video donated $5. If you want to consider making a donation, but maybe you don't want to make it to the LCR, I'll link some other organizations down below in the description box that you could consider researching and possibly donating to. And the second big important thing that I think you can do is vote in the upcoming midterm elections in November. There is a lot at stake in this upcoming election, and if Republicans take control of the House or the Senate, so much of the work the Democrats have been doing to try to undo the wrongs of the Trump era could be derailed or sent backward. And talk to your friends and family about why voting is important. If you're not sure how to register to vote or the steps you need to take to ensure that you can vote in this upcoming election, check out www.vote.org or www.usa.org/how-to-vote. Both of these websites have a lot of great resources to connect you with the information you need in order to ensure that you can make it to the ballot box come November. Alrighty, that's it for this one, and I hope you found this video helpful or maybe a little bit entertaining and informative, and if so, hit that like button down below for the algorithm. Also, I'm thinking about making a video that outlines the entire immigration system in the United States and how it works, and if that sounds interesting to you, then leave me a comment down below and let me know. And of course, subscribe to this channel and make sure you hit that bell notification so that you don't miss any future video uploads. And on that note, I hope to see you back here very soon. Bye-bye.